He had his goals in mind. He wasn't always as focused as he needed to be, and he admitted that. But things were progressing, and his dream was in place. And then in December of 2004, after a number of months of having a weakness in his left hand, and I began to notice there was some difference in the size of his hand and his muscle mass. He finally went to see a doctor after we talked about it for a number of months. And that visit to the doctor in December of 2004 was to change our way and our family in ways we could never have imagined. The symptoms greatly alarmed the physicians and at first pointed menacingly to the possibility that he might have ALS, a merciless killer of the young. You who have entered into such a long nightmare understand the darkness and terror that we felt. Our lives have become shards of glass shattered from the windows of all of our dreams and hopes. For over a year, every day we braced for the worst, hoped for the best, and people prayed. In January of 2006, after almost 13 months of fighting insurance companies, dozens of trips to the doctors with top people around the nation, and prayer around the world, Josh had neurosurgery on the upper quadrant of his shoulder. There were no guarantees. At the day before the surgery, we listened to the two top people in the country decide whether the surgery was even worth doing. After the surgery, we held our breath, and time began to tick off the clock. And God answered. The best medical minds could not explain why the surgery worked, but we knew that God had touched Josh from what afflicted him. We accepted that Josh had been given back to us from the very door of death, and it changed his view and changed our view forever. The intensity of his passion to serve God and the focus of his vision took on an urgency for Josh that made him so impatient to get to the field. He had been given a second chance, but unlike so many people who never acted upon that second chance, he was determined not to mess it up. His challenges were far from over. His illness had pushed his flight training to the background, and the flight school he was training in went out of business. It was a setback. He tried to finish his ratings, but realized if he was going to get his mechanics training done, he would have to leave Geneva College and go to mechanics school at Mission Aviation Institute at Piedmont Baptist College. I saw you, Greg, here. I'm glad you're here, his roommate. In September of 2007, he returned to Geneva and this is strange, but he completed his bachelor's degree in 2006, but actually completed his bachelor's degree in 2006, but actually graduated. No, I got that wrong. He graduated in 2006, but completed his work in 2008. Only Josh. Don't ask the school to do that for you. He worked at Moore Aviation and became an aircraft mechanic and the parts manager there and continued his flight training. Josh was 7 years into his call to missions and he was willing to go, but missions organizations made it clear you can't have that burden of school debt and financially survive on the field. Their reasons are valid. Missionaries hardly ever raise enough money to be on the field besides pay debt off. And yet Josh became very frustrated by that. His school debt became a nemesis, an enemy, the roadblock to his dreams, the threat to his drive and his passion to serve Jesus. He lived frugally, plummeting nearly every cent he made into his debt. He went dumpster diving to retrieve books so he could sell them on eBay. He mowed lawns. He flew across the country to inspect airplanes. He sold hot dogs at Geneva's homecoming. He went to garage sales and more recently, if you know him, became the world's top salesman in Obama bobblehead dolls. These days, he's selling as many as 10 a month. If only those dolls would have come in when the popularity rate was at 80% in the polls, he probably wouldn't have had to worry about his school debt. He was passionate to serve, but frustrated. He sacrificed comfort for his goal. He wanted so badly to be on the field, but like so many like him, He accumulated debt trying to prepare to get there, and that debt that he accumulated in his training kept him from going. He shared that frustration with many friends. That's how the Call to Missions website popped up. In the meantime, Josh waited on God, built friendships, served others, prayed for God that he might get to the harvest. It was early in April of 2009 that a fella flew into the airport where Josh worked, and Josh gassed up his plane and did what Josh always did. He made a friend. The story of what happened next is still unfolding as part of God's plan, but you know, divine moments come in unexpected ways when you're open to God, even when you're just doing your job and gassing up the airplane. It was a divine moment where two people were seeking God to do something, and God decided to cause them to meet. It was just at the right time. That friendship opened hearts and doors, and the result of that story was that on January 2nd, 2010, Josh left Pittsburgh for Florida to work in a missions organization founded by the son of one of his heroes from that story in Ecuador. His outrageous dreams had been given a boost by an unlikely acquaintance, Walter. And Walter, we're grateful to you. God always has a plan. He's working. A few weeks ago, in April of 2010, I spoke to Josh. Spoke on the phone how he hoped to be in South America by this time next year, or perhaps Africa. He didn't care where, he just wanted to go. He spoke how he was towing banners to pay down his debts, and we spoke about his friends who were just like him, who longed to serve God but were blocked by the realities of their finances. We spoke about the dreams of the people around him, and we spoke about marriage and love and sacrifice and the amazing journey that God had privileged him to be on. He was thankful, he was passionate, he was energetic, and he was focused on his call to serve God. And as his dad, I worried about the intensity with which he pursued his dreams. Josh, I said, you need to enjoy the journey. Remember that God has done one unexpected thing after another in your life, and it's never gone quite as you had planned. Josh, God may ultimately expect you or send you someplace other than what you expect to be. And he said, I know, Dad. I just want to serve him, and I need to get over there. I said, Josh, God likes to do the unexpected. Maybe you're close to where you need to be, and you just don't know it yet. Then I said, Josh, did you ever imagine your dad would be the pastor of an African church in the middle of North Hills in Pittsburgh at 53 years old? And we laughed. We talked about the crazy divine detour God had brought to Cornerstone Church with 100 Africans calling me their pastor. Enjoy the journey, son. That's part of God's plan, too. I love you. We always ended our conversations that way. I love you, Dad. See you in a couple weeks for vacation. Later, Dad. Josh wasn't perfect. Most of you could probably easily attest to that. He challenged authority. He let his practical jokes go way too far, and he loved junk food. But Joshua knew God. He had a real relationship with a real Jesus. And he penned it often in closing his letters. He used to close his letters in his grip. Sometime after his brush with death and coming through his illness, he began to change that, and what began to appear was undeserving of his grace. His life demonstrated that Christians can have fun. You see that in his pictures, right? And afterwards, there'll be a presentation running through the building with a lot more pictures, and Josh is goofy in 98% of them. He demonstrated Christians can have fun and wake up in the morning remembering what they did and perhaps wondering how Josh got them to do it.